This time, we're taking a look at the multi-metaphorical blockbuster Aliens. And along the way, we ask, what makes James Cameron such a bastard? Would this movie be different without Michael Biehn? And is the Alien Queen now a Disney princess? We're on an express elevator podcast, going down. This is Force-Fed Sci-Fi. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Force-Fed Sci-Fi podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris Rupp, and I am joined by my friend and co-host,
the Disney princess, Sean Michael Culp.
Okay, we'll need a new name for you now. You can't go by Sean and be a princess.
Why not?
Well, I guess Sean Yun does it, so yeah, I think you can do it.
That's right, darn it. Wow. That was just so, that intro, man, just blew me away. Like, I never thought of that. You're right?
Oh, yeah, Disney owns Fox now.
I didn't.
So that answers the question. Like, A, when are we going to see the Alien movies on Disney Plus? And is the Alien Queen now a Disney princess?
We need a prequel of the Alien Queen.
See, these are the things I think about when, I'm alone and I have too much time on my hands.
I think they could do that, though, right? They could make a kid's movie of the Alien Queen. Like, just make her have big eyes and, little lighter edges. And
No.
just have it from her perspective.
It has to deal with the conflict. It
The
has to deal with the conflict. Like, well, the babies I make kill people, but I have to continue laying eggs. That's a hard Pixar movie to get sold.
No, but hear me out. It's for, she just cares about her children, and these humans just want to kill her because they don't understand the deeper constructs of her mind.
So now we're getting into like Inside Out Pocahontas territory.
We're right there. We are there. You could spin that. I think it's possible, Chris.
That's a very hard Pixar movie to get sold.
All right, fair enough. So, tell me about this Disney princess.
Okay, so synopsis of Aliens. So after spending 57 years in stasis, Ellen Ripley is awakened to an entirely different world. While dealing with her trauma from the Nostromo, she learns that the planet from her past is now home to colonizers. And when the company loses contact with those colonizers, Ripley, along with a group of aliens, are tasked with finding out what happened on LV-426.
Nice.
So we get it's a nice continuation of the world that's established in the first movie.
Yeah.
It answers a lot of questions that were raised, and it forces Ripley to confront the trauma that's now shaping her life.
And boy, does she. From early on, she has to face that trauma. Chest bursters, all of it. She has to go back into basically her horrors, right? The thing that she just woke up to escape.
The cause of all her nightmares and pain. That opening nightmare scene is truly terrifying. And you just see on her face the entire time, like, she is not comfortable being on LV-426.
No. And what a name. That's the name of the planet, finally.
That's just the designation. It's like when they find, like, an unidentified body out in space, they just give it, like, some generic type of, like, here's the quadrant it's located in, and here's the person who discovered it. So you might get, like, something that's named, this is 17, Peterson or something. Mm-hmm. It's a very basic designation.
Habitable planet number 4.
Yeah.
So for this film, James Cameron directs and wrote the story, or the screenplay and story.
He cranked out a 42-page treatment for this story in 3 days.
That makes me, why though? Why James Cameron? And like, why in 1980s?
Well, you have to look at what he did before this. Because in 1982, he does The Terminator. And because of the layoff period, he also wrote Rambo First Blood Part 2. He did Piranha 2, even though that was like he was fired halfway through production. So, yeah, James Cameron, pretty up-and-coming director at this time. Everybody was blown away by Terminator, and they thought and Fox thought okay, what can he do with a bigger budget and like more control of the script? So he writes this. His producer girlfriend, Gail Ann Hurd, came along with him. At the time they were boyfriend and girlfriend. They got married during production. So yeah, they're a team. They're knocking it out, and then
One of the power couples.
Yeah, a very big power couple. And then I think it's important to note too that Gail Ann Hurd was, we think of her as this great producer now, but there was a lot of skepticism about her abilities at the time. There's a lot of great stories about her kind of staring down a room of Fox executives saying like, well, what can you do? Like, you little girl, like, what can you do with this movie?
Wow.
And then she lays down all her references, like, call all these people. They'll tell you what I can do.
Which I will say, we did talk about the Terminator.
Yeah, we have our Terminator suite of episodes.
So if you'd like to learn about what we thought about that, check it out.
Absolutely.
But that's cool. That's funny. We do see a little pattern with James Cameron and his wives.
Yeah, a little bit. You can definitely compare his filmography to the list of people he's married.
But kudos to him for bolstering, bolstering people's careers,
Yeah. By all accounts, he supported Gale Ann Hurd unequivocally. And they've made so many movies together.
And Bigelow?
Catherine,
Yeah, she got big. I mean, shoot.
Linda Hamilton.
Yeah. He's the man.
Speaking of strong females, though, like front and center in this movie is Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley. She's back, even though it looked like she wouldn't return for a little while. Cameron's original script was centered on Ellen Ripley. The problem was Fox did not sign Sigourney Weaver, and then they read the script like, "What do you mean Ripley's front and center? Like, we don't have her." And Cameron said, "You have to get her back." She was actually paid, like, at the time, this was a huge sum of money. She was paid $1 million to come back and star in this movie.
Oh, that's awesome. She got her money.
She got her money because she saw how badly they wanted her, and she liked the script. She wanted to do the movie, but Fox kind of bungled bringing her back early on.
Which is crazy because, I mean, a recast wouldn't, I don't know, if they recast the film, I don't think it would have made it, as big of a hit as it is now.
Sigourney Weaver is Ellen Ripley. You can't get around that. If it was possible to bring back Sigourney Weaver, then by God, you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. And they did. Who else, though? They got Bill Paxon in this. A young Bill Paxon.
Bill Paxton, yeah, like, who started his career as a set builder working alongside James Cameron and just appeared in a lot of movies as like a favor. He and Cameron were pretty tight buddies. And then this was, I think, like his big kind of like coming out party. Like, he's good set builder, but then we see like, yeah, he's got some acting comedic chops here. We got, Bill Paxton as Hudson, Michael Biehn as Dwayne Hicks, Paul Reiser as Carter Burke, Lance Henriksen as the android Bishop, little girl Newt, played by Carrie Hennand, who this was her only acting role, actually. They filmed this movie in England, so they decided to go around to the American air bases and just cast an American child living there.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it worked out.
That's like, I wonder, because, just like having the guy found in the bar that played the alien creature in the first one. That's cool. They found one of the stars just on a base.
We also get Jeanette Goldstein as Vasquez, and we'll get into how problematic that casting was in a little bit. And we've also got William Hope as Lieutenant Gorman. So much bigger cast than the first film, but great cast too. Like, I love this cast. I don't see them, too much outside of this film that often, but man, I love their alchemy together.
Definitely. Tell me, what about the controversial casting?
So, if you haven't figured it out already, Jeanette Goldstein is a white woman playing a Hispanic female soldier.
Yeah.
She spent hours in makeup, browning her skin. She wore brown contact lenses. They removed her freckles, dyed her hair. Jeanette Goldstein is white, playing an Hispanic character. I don't know how they managed to get away with this, even in the early 80s, and I don't know how this film has avoided like this controversy in retrospect. But like, Jeanette Goldstein's white.
Does it bother you?
I didn't know she was.
Me either.
I didn't know she was white until later on when I saw her in other movies. Like, wait a minute, and then I pieced it together.
You did some research,
and I figured out, like, wait a minute, like you were
brown eyes, different.
Like you're brown in this movie, and yet you're white as a foot of snow in this movie.
Something must be afoot. Well, kudos to their makeup job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a little problematic when you're viewing it through today's lenses, but
I would say so. Yes, I'll agree with you there. It's kind of like viewing old westerns back in the 50s, where you're like, wait a minute.
Well, I think it still would have been controversial if this movie were made today, but I think it's more so that this character Vasquez is really kind of front and center in the film's second and third act.
Oh yeah, she's one of the main.
She's a very popular character in this movie and has a great dynamic amongst this squad of soldiers. But I think this is something that like you have to ask when watching this movie now. Like, how comfortable are you watching a white woman play a Hispanic woman? And sounds like she's, basically trying out for, a gang or something with her dialogue. There's a lot of pendejo throwing out there, a lot of hombres and essays and things like that. Like, it just seems like a very stereotypical caricature of a Hispanic character at this time.
I would say yes. Through today's lens, it is kind of racist. Her character is a little bit stereotypical. Definitely. Like, did they say they make like comments about like illegal, like aliens and stuff? Yeah, I was like,
Bill Paxson goes, someone said alien. She thought they said illegal alien,
which is nuts because this film like takes place in like hundreds of years from now.
Yeah,
so it's like, well, hey, product of the time, right?
Yeah,
that's a one little slice.
I would say so. It's very much a product of the time, but still problematic through today's lens.
I will agree with you there, sir.
So, I mean, after the massive success that the first movie was, there was interest in making a sequel. And we talked about this in our last episode, that Fox, through some creative accounting, tried to say that the first movie lost money and therefore they couldn't go with a sequel.
Yeah.
Just kind of crappy on their part.
Yeah. But it took time. I mean, I think, though, the time, taken was in its benefit. Because who knows if James Cameron would have even directed it. So the movie that we would have gotten would have been totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, if you know you've got a hit on your hands and you want to try and milk that for what it's worth, they should have tried to move faster with making a sequel as opposed to waiting 7 years. This is one of those films, too. We talk about this a lot, where the production of it itself is almost as legendary as the movie itself.
There's a lot of history.
There's so much. Like, even the casting, like, Michael Biehn was not originally set to play Hicks. There was an actor by the name of James Remar who was set to play Hicks. But during production, he was arrested for drug possession.
Oh, no.
And they just fired him and recast him because of Bihn's familiarity with James Cameron playing Kyle Reese in the Terminator film.
Yeah.
They called him up, and 2 days later, he was in London and just in costume, in character, on this set.
Okay. I thought, right? Because he was in Terminator?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew he looked familiar. I was like, that guy looks really familiar. And so I was like, oh, is he the, like certain directors have certain guys that they always cast?
Yeah, Michael Biehn, I think, has been in something like 3 or 4 of Cameron's movies.
So he's the guy.
He's the guy. He loves working with Cameron. A lot of people don't, though.
As we've talked about on other films that we reviewed with Cameron.
And the cast, I mean, overall, I mean, they had an opportunity to customize their armor, so that's why it seems unique to the characters. And also, they had an opportunity to train with SAS soldiers for 3 weeks, which definitely lends a sense of credibility. Like, you never once doubt that this group is, a finely tuned military unit. I mean, they handle their weapons properly. They take off their helmets when they should. Although if you're in a combat situation, you never take off your helmet.
Yeah. They did seem pretty polished, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because so many movies, you just see guys that have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
It's like, oh, come on. Just watch a YouTube video. Jesus. So I like that about that.
And they were even encouraged to read Starship Troopers.
Which is cool.
So we get a lot of crossover episodes today. We encourage you to go back and listen to Terminator, and now go listen to our episode on Starship Troopers.
Hey, come on back. Oh, God.
Also, big budget for the time. This got a budget of $18.5 million, which may not seem like a lot, but in today's money, that translates to about $42.5 million. So still decent amount of movie. And for what you see in this final product, like, yes, like that budget was stretched to like the absolute limit.
Yeah.
Like every dollar that they possibly could spend is there on screen, and it's worth it.
Mm-hmm. They took advantage with all the sets, all the puppets. It looks great, though, for its meager budget.
Right.
Aged very well.
Very well. And filming was fraught with controversies because Cameron, by his own admission, is a perfectionist. Some people may call him a bastard. It's entirely, whichever one you want to choose. So it was shot at Pinewood Studios in Britain with a British crew. And since Cameron was unfamiliar with like their practices, he would work and work and work. And then all of a sudden the crew would just stop and take what they call those tea time breaks. I don't know how long they were, but they would just be in the middle of setting up a shop and setting up a shot, and they would just take a break. He's like, guys, get back to work.
What are you doing? This is not what's supposed to be.
Like, it's tea time, mate.
It was a couple hours a week they would lose, right?
Yeah.
Because they're like, you American, we need our tea.
Well, it all adds up. It's a half hour a day. And by the end of, if you're shooting 6 days a week, that's 3 hours of shooting that you've lost.
I just say that speaks volumes to the Brits and how they care about that mental health.
Well, this pissed off Cameron so much.
I'm sure it did.
And also, too, this crew was not familiar with Cameron. So the cinematographer would basically go against whatever Cameron wanted, and so would the first assistant director. And this pissed him off so much that he fired both of them.
Wow.
He fired the cinematographer first, replaced him with a different one, and then it was the first assistant director, a guy by the name of Derek Cracknell, that this firing actually caused the crew to just walk off.
Oh, my God.
And they refused to return to work.
Well, I know he didn't work with the union crews a lot.
No.
If it was stuff, because, yeah, they wanted that.
Well, he
extra.
wanted to move production. He wanted to bring in an entirely different crew after this happened. But Fox and Gale and her told him, you need to fix this because we can't come in over schedule. We have to come in under budget. And he sat the crew down, brought him back, and basically apologized. And I'm sure what was sort of like a half apology, probably sort of like an apology without admitting fault kind of thing.
I could definitely see that with James Cameron because he's not that. He doesn't seem like the type.
Well, the apology worked because the movie was delivered on time and under budget. But the problem getting into post-production was there wasn't a lot of time to edit the movie. Mm-hmm. And James Horner had 3 weeks to compose a score for this movie.
Oh, my God.
Which is not a lot of time.
No.
You need as much time as possible in post-production to get a film score. And 3 weeks is not a lot. Because usually a film score is the last thing you do after editing and getting all that together. And to just say like, oh, by the way, James, you've only got 3 weeks.
Kudos to him, though. For 3 weeks and getting the score that he got.
This score is amazing.
Sometimes, though, that helps, right? When they're rushed, it's like, well, time to work those creative juices.
Well, yeah, when you don't have a lot of time to work with, like, simplicity is often the best route. And we saw this with Back to the Future and Alan Silvestri's work on that film. He didn't have a lot of time to pop in a score either, but now it's one of the best film scores that's ever been made.
So there you go. There's a tidbit for you people out there with scores. Don't ruminate. Just go with your instincts.
We've also got, this is another movie we've got in our oeuvre that Stan Winston has worked on. Stan Winston famously has created some of the best visual effects ever on screen, and this movie's no exception. His team created a lot of the sets that we saw, and also the design of the Alien Queen.
I would say it's hard to compare these films, the first one and the second one, because they're just so different set-wise. Like, this one is so engrossed with that money. They really just... who would have thought 7 years later, just the design, it's so sleek. You know, it doesn't feel like a 70s film.
No, this doesn't even feel like an 80s film.
It's aged so well.
I mean, 80s films up to this point were sleek. They were sexy. And this isn't. This is not that film. This is very gritty. It's dark. It's very much like a can-do like type of thing. Like this, it's ordinary people is what it is. Because I think getting up into this point, we had audiences had a clear-cut version of what constituted an action hero. Mm-hmm. And I think James Cameron definitely has had his part to play in this. He wrote Rambo. He wrote Rambo First Blood Part 2. And that's this hyper-violent Sylvester Stallone is buff as hell action type of hero. So James Cameron played his role in creating this version of the hyper 80s action hero and then totally flipped it on its head with his portrayal and writing of Ellen Ripley. Mm-hmm. So, yes, suck the genre a little bit, but then brings it back.
I think James Cameron, you could refer to him for changing the genre so many times. With Terminator, Rambo, Aliens, and then coming out with the Terminator 2. He's just added to that. He just flips, like you said, he flips it on its head all the time. He's really a pioneer of defining action films to this day that we see.
Which is, in seeing like some of his more recent work, like Titanic and Avatar, I think it's very hard like not to look back and say like, you were capable of writing, great movies. You were capable of writing good dialogue. And I think even a casual viewer is able to pick up on sort of this allegory that's persistent in this film to the Vietnam War.
Oh yeah, dude, totally. Yeah, even just how the troops all acted with each other, just the dialogue, it's perfect. So reminiscent of something like that. That's a great point. I didn't even think about that. But that's brilliant. You're absolutely correct.
Well, there's this overconfident and technologically superior fighting force that's grossly underestimating their enemy. You have an opponent that may not seem equipped to fight, but yet they completely dominate everybody. And yet they remain unseen and yet everywhere at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's the Marines fighting the Viet Cong is what it is.
Very much so.
And then even Ripley and Burke could be seen as metaphors for the CIA advisors, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. It's like telling them, well, don't tell anybody we're operating in Cambodia. But then you also get this failure of leadership with Gorman and his incompetence that directly leads to the death of so many squad members. Mm-hmm. I mean, people we don't know too well, like the anonymous soldier that's being killed and taken off into the jungle.
Yeah. Because I don't know if they had the backstory on how many like missions he led. I can't remember. I don't know if they said anything about it. I missed it.
I got the impression that Gorman was like fresh out of boot.
That's what I thought too. Or like, I thought someone said in the movie it was like their second time doing something, and Ripley was like, "Oh, okay, this is great," because he seemed so unorganized, like scared. Yeah. His face was sweating. He looked ghostly pale, like he didn't know what he was doing.
Definitely was leaning heavily on Apone to do the heavy lifting on the leadership. Mm-hmm. And even during the drop, it's like, how many drops is this for you, Lieutenant? I forget the number exactly. Yeah, it's like two, including this one.
Yeah. That's what I
and the other one was simulated. And yet you look over and you see Hicks and he's sleeping.
He did not have control of his crew.
I mean, and Hudson's even walking up around like during the drop sequence. Like for these Marines, this is just another day at the office for them.
Mm-hmm. And him, he was quaking in his boots.
And I think it's possible to draw a through line from this film and others from the same time that kind of contributes to our perspective of the Vietnam War in popular culture. Because you had Aliens and Platoon that came out in the same year. And Platoon would go on to win Best Picture, and it's now become like the granddaddy of them all in terms of Vietnam War films. But then 3 years later, you got films like Born on the 4th of July and Casualties of War that really kind of ripped open this veneer of the Vietnam War. It was not a popular war. It's still not a popular war. And I think we as a society are still trying to reckon with our role and our place in the Vietnam War. Mm. We thought it was a war of ideologies. You can't fight a war of ideologies. You need good versus evil. You just do in a war. Like we won in World War II, and then Vietnam, we got our asses whooped.
Yeah. But I think they portrayed the Marines really well in this film, and they really embodied that soldier mentality. Because Marines are nuts, man.
I mean, they really did. But at time, and this is probably just a civilian in me talking about this. Like, sure. Did this film almost seem too ourage to you at any point?
For me, yeah. It like Bill Paxson got really annoying. I don't know. I know a lot of people like him. I couldn't stand him in the movie. I thought he was so annoying and just his whole attitude about him. But there are people like that, though, in the military. They're very hoorah, hoorah. Like, oh, yeah.
And you can speak to this more than I possibly can, but like, does this seem like an accurate portrayal of military life?
Somewhat. Not.
I mean, obviously there's going to be liberties with it, but like, is it about as accurate as Hollywood can get to a certain extent?
In a way. I mean, I'm not a Marine. I'm Army. So I don't know. I can't speak for like how Marines roll, but for some units, definitely. That's how they roll. They're very like brother in arms and like just super chill, laid back with each other, very about, each other. Because you spend all that time with each other, bonding, That's why with like Vasquez, when they're right outside of the ship, Ripley comes, saves him. And the dude's obviously dead. She wants to like go back and get him. I mean, that's real, because you spend all that years with people. You don't want to lose them. You want to go back and save them, So I felt that stuff was real, pretty accurate. It's not like, these aren't like cold-blooded. And like the lieutenant, that was what was funny to me with that scene where they're getting their asses kicked and the lieutenant's like quaking, because that's the joke in the military, that lieutenants they're not that intelligent. You need to have a good NCO if you want a good officer. And which was my one gripe with the film, sending the first sergeant out there with the guys and leaving the officer just at the ship. I'm like, that wouldn't happen. If you have a commander and then the first sergeant, they're always together. You would never, like at least in the units I've been, I've never seen a first sergeant just like go out, because he's the top NCO. Like,
I mean, your first sergeant is like the direct liaison between the officers and the enlisted men, right?
Yes. So you wouldn't see. I've never seen that where they send him out in the field. He would be with the commander relaying the info to the top like squad leaders.
I do love Apone, though. I think,
he was great.
He was great. Al Matthews is actually a Vietnam vet.
I figured, because I'm like, this guy's too good. I'm like, he's too good. He's too good.
I love him. I just love his cigar chewing, his hat. I love when he first gets out of stasis and he goes, "Day in the cold is like a day on the farm. Every meal a banquet. Every paycheck a fortune." I love that so much.
He was perfect. I figured, I'm like, this guy is too good. Like, you just know when you see people who actually have been in, you're like, oh yeah, they got it.
This has got to be the origin of the trope of, the stogie chomping hard ass sergeant. This has to be.
It has to be.
I know you could probably trace it back to some William Holden movie in the 50s, but to me, like, this is where this trope comes from.
Mm-hmm. He's just such a badass,
and it doesn't get any better than Al Matthews. Like, if this were, you could probably put Lou Gossett Jr. in this role, but it's not going to be the same as Al Matthews being Sergeant Apone.
No, and I'll go ahead. He was actually my red shirt, Apone, because I was so bummed when he got taken.
I agree.
So mad.
I agree, and that's like the one that's like, no, don't kill Apone.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, take the officer. Don't take him. He seems like he knows what he's doing. He just had not mystique, but you just wanted to see him on the screen so much longer than when he was, because he knew what he was doing. He was the guy.
I don't know like how accurate it is for when Frost makes that comment. It's like, I guess the new lieutenant's too good to eat with us grunts. Like. I don't know, like the closest thing I have to compare that like is life in the Boy Scouts. Like, you don't see like the adults like eating, the adult leaders eating with the kids.
It just depends on what unit. Some units are like that.
Yeah,
where the officers are like, oh, we're too.
They stick their nose up at hanging out with the grunts or something. But like, I think like it works to a certain extent because you have to build that camaraderie, and I think this is something that's explored more in things like Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan. It's like you're gonna send these men to their deaths at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that element of you can't get too close to them, but at the same time you're going into the crucible of combat with them.
It just depends on the unit. Combat units, yes, there's a lot less of that because officers are supposed to be a part because they're the dreamers of the whole thing. The enlisted are the folks that do run the plans of the officers, but in a BSB or more of like a Pogue unit where you're like on the homeland or running like a hospital or something, absolutely. The like doctors or someone is going to be an officer, so you don't really see like the mixture as much. But because you're going to be out there with the blood, sweat, tears, man. At the end of the day, it's just a rank.
I wish we had more time with this unit, as a full unit together. Yeah. And it was sad to see them all. Get fragged the way they did. But I mean, which Marine did you most like identify with?
Oh.
Like, which is the one that's like, man, I would like love to have a beer with you, or like I see myself like in this unit.
What's his name? The guy at the end that survives, not the lieutenant, but the
Hicks.
Hicks, yes, Hicks was cool. I liked Hicks. I thought he was great. especially like that one scene with Ripley where Hicks has to make the call, going, and she's like, I think we should nuke it. I was like, all right, this is up to this guy. He's a corporal. He's literally nothing in the military, but he has to take control. And I thought I did a damn good job, owning that leadership. And I loved it. I was like, man, I'd love to pick this guy's brain if he was a real person, or have at least that person on my squad, because that's a go-to, especially for being so young and no experience.
Yeah.
That's a leader.
I always love Hudson in this movie.
Hudson?
Like, Hudson is sarcastic, doesn't want to be there, but at the end when all the aliens are dropping down from the ceiling in the control room, he steps up and he goes down hard. He goes out swinging, and there's a lot of sadness when he's taken, but there's a lot of pride too, because he went down hard. And I always appreciate that in movies like this where they don't just randomly kill off characters like this. There is that, there is that to a certain extent, but every single character goes out swinging. That's what I love.
They do, except the corporate shill.
Oh God,
his death. I wish though we could have seen his death on screen. Like, watch. I was hoping that we got something like from the first one with the little mouth just jabs him right in the forehead. That was my gripe with this film. I wish we could have seen something like that.
What makes Burke's betrayal like so hard is the entire film he's set up to be Ripley's ally. And that perception shifts a little bit once we figure out that it was actually Burke that sent the colonists out to look at the spacecraft. It eventually led to the deaths of 150 people. And then what makes it worse, what finally puts the nail in the coffin, is letting the facehuggers out to basically kill Ripley and Newt, a little child, and then kill the other Marines.
Yeah.
It's like you were willing to barbecue all these people just so you could bring an alien back to the company. And I love Ripley's line, like just that final dagger towards them. Like, you don't see them screwing each other over for a percentage.
Yes, I agree with that. My gripe though with Burke was because with Alien, you could chalk it up to Ash. Like, his betrayal is just programming, right? He's a robot. But with Burke, it's like he's a human, Is he really that much of a corporate shill that he's just going to barbecue, as you say, everyone? But at the same token, it made me wonder, just like in the first one, how was Ash and Burke going to, like, what was their plan on containing, Like, let's say the face.
Well, they're going to freeze them, put them in stasis.
Okay.
And then not freeze them when they get back. Like Ripley was saying, like, he could sabotage whatever units he wanted to.
Yeah.
And then program when he was released and not release Newt and Ripley. And I mean, this is where this movie is the emergence of Weyland-Yutani as sort of the bastards of the Alien series.
Yeah. I just didn't believe Burke had that capacity. He didn't seem that intelligent.
Well, he's human, so he has no excuse for his bad behavior.
Yeah.
Whereas Ash, he's a victim of his programming.
Yes. So I can, you can like brush off that Ash as a villain, but Burke was the villain essentially. Him and the corporation again.
Well, even right from the beginning, the company is set out to be this bad boogeyman. Mm-hmm. Like, they blame Ripley for what happened on the Nostromo.
Yeah. Which is so stupid.
Like, it's not her, like, and even they admit, like, well, yeah, the data recorder corroborates some of your accounts, but the ship is gone. We lost all that money. It's like, aren't you glad, like, that I, prevented everybody on Earth from dying? Like, aren't you glad that I'm home safe?
Right. They were all about the numbers in the end. They didn't care.
And then even Burke and his stupid corporate legalese, like, we have a substantial dollar amount tied to this installation. It's like, oh my God, you're speaking yuppie language.
It's like, don't you have insurance on the ship or something, that you can write off?
Gotta say, I do love his suits, though.
Yeah.
Like, I love that collar. I wish that would become something here as we're getting on in the 21st century. I do love Burke's fashion, at least in the beginning part of it. And then when they're on LV-426, he looks like a CIA contractor, is what it looks like.
He does. He did rock some good clothes, much so. But his death was satisfying. It was just one of those, yes!
It's one of those rare deaths where you cheer it on. You're glad it happens.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a deleted scene where Ripley actually finds Burke's cocoon body
Oh.
when she's going to look for Newt. And then he's asking her, like, help me or kill me or something. But then she just keeps walking.
Oh.
But they cut it out of the film. Because
Yeah.
I think, like, we got it. It's implied that he's, dead. So you don't need that scene. I can see why they cut that out.
And it kind of takes away from Ripley's empathy and compassion. Because you feel like even though he sold him out, she still would have saved him. Or, she just had that great moral compass in the end. So her just walking by him would kind of not do her character totally wrong, but, it would put a little shade.
I think she does take over out of this sense of compassion and frustration at the incompetence. And in the atmospheric processing station, she sees the camera feeds go out, and she sees Gorman basically doing nothing. And then when she starts up the APC and the music kicks in, it's like the entire tone of the movie shifts, because it's no longer about the Marines going in and kicking ass. It's now a fight for survival.
Yes, it is. And her portrayal, I have to credit Sigourney Weaver's acting. Like when she sees the chest burster, like she portrays PTSD so well. You just see the look of horror on her face, like, oh my God, not again.
Not again.
Not again.
Like, it's Kane all over again. And then all the aliens just emerge from the wall. It's an incredible bit of suspenseful filmmaking. Like, and you don't know what is in that atmospheric processing station. They're going down into the sublevels, and the camera feeds are just. It's a great way of kind of disconnecting from everything. You see it secondhand, and this detachment of, like, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Until Ripley just says, like, screw you.
I'm going.
Right.
And she doesn't care. I love that she didn't care at all about what the lieutenant was saying. She's like, screw you. I'm going to save him. I'm not hiding out. And that's kind of where I felt the contractor vibe from her, like how you're saying the CIA offered it, because it did feel very much, because that's how contractors are. They're like, I'm going to do whatever. I don't care. I'm not loyal to you. F off.
Best line, though, that Ripley has is when they're full on going to destroy the station, and Burke says the whole dollar amount thing, and she goes, they can bill me.
Yes. I loved that too. She kicks so much ass in this film.
There's a lot of feminine masculinity with Ripley. She doesn't do anything out of this sort of like, I'm going to be the hero and I'm going to save the day type of thing. She doesn't do any of that. It's very much of, she sees the situation she's in. She sees the failures of other people, and she just says, screw it, I'm taking over. I know what to do. It is very much instinct driven, but it also comes from a place of compassion and caring, because she's also trying to protect Newt from the horrors that we can only imagine what this little girl has witnessed over the last 3 weeks or so that she's been alone in this station. Oh my God. And even when she sees on the camera that they're in the processing station, she tells her, like, go sit over there, get away from this. You don't need to see this. It's that moral compass. And to write off Burke as well. Like, I thought you were on our side and you're not. Well, now you're just an enemy. I don't care who gets you. You see the moral contrast definitely play out. I mean, we would have thought Burke would have, been helpful, but he locks him in the control room to be skewered.
Yeah, I know. He's such a dick. And then he locks them out of the room when crap hits the fan. He goes and closes the door on him, because he's like, oh, screw these people. I'm going to get my own. I'm going to survive, which ends up being his own turmoil. But you're absolutely right.
But oddly enough, like, even Burke's death is off screen. And it's the same thing that kind of we saw in the first film. This film isn't really that gruesome or gory. A lot of the deaths occur off screen. Really, the goriest death we get is probably, well, maybe not even Gorman. We get the colonist we see as victim to the chest burster.
Oh, yeah.
And then we see the pilot, Pharaoh, like, the bunch of blood starts coming out of her head when the alien gets her from behind.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
No, I do love that shot of all the blood spurting on the screen, and poor Pharaoh is just like, I can't do anything about this.
Right. I know I didn't care for the androids like getting ripped in half. I felt like the android getting ripped in half was just because that felt tropey to me. Because you saw, Ash, his head come off in the white, and it's a beautiful spectacle. It's so visually just appealing, the little organs and everything. But I was like, you're just doing this because it felt like they were just doing it because it was in the first film. And it looked cool.
I don't think so. I certainly like the dynamic between Ripley and Bishop. Because obviously she has a reason to be distrustful of androids. Mm-hmm. And Bishop, to his credit, is basically doing everything he can to please Ripley. Mm-hmm. I mean, the other Marines, the other people, they may as well be indifferent to Bishop. He's just there to help him out. They know he's not going to hurt them. He's just there to help. But Ripley's just like, you stay away from me.
Yeah. But Bishop was he was the OG. He really kept this mission going. He got the ship, the antenna, I mean, everything. He was just always there at the right time.
I don't know if you saw this, but Vasquez, when he's about to go into that rat pipe,
mm-hmm.
Vasquez hands him a gun.
Yeah.
And he just looks at this like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? Mm-hmm. It just gives it back to him or to her. What is he going to do with this?
Because he's super strong, and I feel like he was just so intelligent he would have gotten away anyways. He just never feared. And I love with Bishop where he volunteers to go out, and he's like, it's not something that I want to do either. Even though I'm an android, I still don't want to die.
Well, don't forget, he prefers the term artificial person.
And I really like that because they fleshed out his, him being an android and actually having feelings and emotions. And
there's one really brief moment in the movie where Bishop is analyzing, I think he's dissecting one of the face huggers. Mm-hmm. And there's this brief twinge of, you don't know if he's going to turn like Ash did.
Yeah.
I do love that moment.
Yeah. It definitely had those vibes where you're like, oh crap, is he going to be obsessed with him? But no, he pulled through.
No, he's more on the side of humans.
Because of his programming. And he ends up saving Newt at the end, even though he was ripped in half.
That is probably the best effect in the film, is having Bishop being pulled up and skewered by the alien queen and then ripped apart. Like this is a movie that's full of great effects, but to me that's the one that stands out the most.
It is very iconic. And once again, it also serves as Ripley then can fulfill her destiny. She gets to fight the queen on her own. Because with Bishop, he's super strong, very intelligent. With him, they could have together bested, I feel, the queen very easily. But with Ripley having to do it on her own, getting in the machine and fighting the queen at the end, it just satisfies. She could do it on her own. She don't need no man's help, and she got it,
This is my surrogate daughter. But I think another key theme to this film, and I think this is something that kind of has gotten lost over the years because the director's cut wasn't immediately available, is there's this very strong theme of motherhood. You have a very twisted, deranged sense of motherhood from the alien side of things. But then you also get this strong sense of maternal instincts and love and compassion from Ripley. And this is where I think the director's cut is something that should be more readily available, because I truly believe it's the definitive cut. Okay. Because there is a scene early on in the film where Burke has a dossier on Ripley's daughter. And we didn't know she had a daughter in the first film. But we also learned that after being gone for 57 years, her daughter grew up. And then unfortunately she passed away before the movie started. And so you get this lost opportunity for Ripley to kind of close that loop. See her daughter, say, I'm sorry, I missed the last 56 birthdays.
I'm pulling Interstellar.
Right. And then because cutting out that scene then forces you to cut out other scenes in the film where Ripley goes and naps with Newt and checks on her. And then that payoff at the end where the alien queen is blasted out into space and Newt hugs Ripley, accepting her as her new mother. That payoff now is gone. And that's why I wish those scenes could have stayed in there. Because I love the theme of motherhood. Because it's not something you'd expect from a sci-fi blockbuster like this. You certainly get the Vietnam allegory right away, but to bring in Ripley's softer, more compassionate side brings a lot of humanity to this film that we don't often see.
I kind of though got it though without her, without knowing that she had a kid. I didn't need to know that she had a kid, but because I always thought Ripley was just like single or she didn't have anyone back there because they don't provide in this how long the space travel, how long the missions are, etc. So I could only imagine how difficult it would be to have a family, especially if you're gone for months and years at a time. But with Newt, while it was annoying at times, I definitely got the feel of the motherhood, even if they wrote it as her being single, no family ties or whatever, Newt being her child, a surrogate child. I kind of got that, her being the caregiver. So it's kind of cool. But that would have helped add a little bit more hoopska to it.
You also get this hint of romance between Hicks and Ripley.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. When he's showing her how to operate the weapon. And everything. That's what I thought they were going to go for a little bit more lean into, but I'm glad at the same time they didn't, because that's not what this movie's about. And so it was just
it's
nice
not.
tease.
But it is nice to see those softer glimpses into Ripley's character as well as Hicks, because we don't know his name is Dwayne until he tells her.
Yeah.
Like these are all just faceless Marines up into a point, and when they start dying, and then Hicks is able to really inject a lot of humanity into this film and into the Marine culture, because he's the last Marine. Yeah. Gorman's gone, Vasquez is gone, Hudson's gone, Apone's dead. Dwayne is the last one. We have to know Dwayne on some fundamental level. We can't just chalk him up as another Marine that's just going to die.
No. But I did enjoy how with Gorman, he sacrificed himself. Like he got his, at the end, despite
Gorman got his redemption. I will give him that. He was, ideal. Like officers go through boot just like everyone else, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, for him to just be that sniveling type of, rear echelon type of officer who doesn't really know what to do, just seems like a bit of a disservice to the Marines, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But then, he redeems himself. He tries to go back for Vasquez and tries to save her, but
and then, in a way,
goes out hard.
They go out hard with the grenade. Because, Vasquez. I will say, though, the one thing that didn't continuity's sake is the acid blood. Because in the first film, they really played up the acid blood, like going through 3 levels. This one, I got on the arm a little bit, and then it was like, they just brushed it off on the armor, took it off. Because the way they set up the blood in the first film, I would have felt like if any of the aliens' blood got on Vasquez's leg, it would have chopped it off. Because the way it went through the hole so quick. So I do think the continuity with that, they had to change it for precedent's sake. But
well, it did get on her ankle and she couldn't move.
Yeah,
and it's still there. It's just not as present as it was in the first film.
It didn't go through 3 holes.
We saw Drake get sprayed with acid, and his face was melting. Hudson got acid on him. Hicks did. So you still see its destructiveness.
Oh yeah, that was just my minor gripe.
That's okay. That's okay to have a minor gripe.
Which is actually good, because you know how good the film is if the minor gripe is, the acid just isn't as potent as the first one. So you got a good film. In my opinion.
Yeah. Would you have liked to see more scenes that kind of really show what life is like in this colony before it all went to hell?
Yeah. I think that would have been interesting. I think that is a lacking in this whole series, that you'd never really get to see what life is like in space. It always just seems like them trying to beat the aliens. So I would have appreciated that a little bit more.
There's a brief scene in the director's cut, but for the majority, a lot of it was left out in the theatrical cut. You just have the Marines show up and it's all gone to hell.
Yeah,
they're all missing. They're all dead. It's just. There's gripes about the company, of course. You see a little kid riding around on a big wheel that's got the Weyland-Yutani logo on it. But I would have liked to at least have something more like a prologue that really kind of shows what daily life is like in this colony.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, their goal is to make the planet habitable, but there's like, really, that's all you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've got atmospheric processors. Are you mining for natural resources? Like, because you really don't need 150 people if all you're doing is just having atmospheric processors there. But what do I know? Colonizing planets isn't in my job description.
No. But it would have been nice to have a little bit more insight into it, which, in my opinion, is the one downfall of this whole thing. But that's all right. No movie is perfect.
No, this did get pretty close, though.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Anything else we want to talk about before we move into the fun parts?
I will just praise the usage of the aliens in this film. Despite, like in the first one, they had to work with a guy in a suit. Cameron used the scenes. I don't know if he used miniatures or puppets, but the scene where, the final standoff where it shows the aliens creeping up on them.
Yeah.
Through the grates and everything. That was really well done with the fire and the lights and everything. I don't know how he did it.
I think those were all like stuntmen in suits.
Great. It looked way better, I would say, than the guy in the costume.
In spite of the title, yeah, you do see multiple aliens on screen, but it's not until they're creeping up on the control room and you hear like the motion tracker going off and you get that stinger that shows them all in the ceiling. I think that's just such brilliant filmmaking.
It looks so good. And then with the hands catching the elevator door, I mean, he really used the aliens to its best. The only one that didn't age as well for me was the Queen. It definitely looked puppet. It looked just very unstable. She did. But, I mean, that's okay. It's the 80s, and they're trying to pull off this giant creature, right? It still looked cool with the mouth and the head and everything. I mean, looked wonderful.
Yeah, it doesn't jam-pack the screen with aliens like I think later films in the series do. But especially in the firefight in the atmospheric processing center, like, yeah, they're expend all ordnance, but you don't see a lot of them like aliens on screen. Like you see them like being shot up and exploding and all that, but it's a great example of not tilting your hand too much. Yeah, and especially the scenes where they're setting up the remote sentry guns. You just see the ammo counters going down, and you hear the aliens being killed, but you don't see any of it. I think that's just brilliant. It's like they're wall to wall in there, man. It's like, yeah, they are. That's what makes it so freaking terrifying.
Absolutely. And you don't get bored of them. They don't show because sometimes with creatures, if they reveal them too much, then they just kind of get boring. They lose their mysticism and their fear factor. But with this, he didn't overplay his hand.
Well, this is why I think the addition of the motion tracker is such a brilliant motif, because you hear it. That sound effect is amazing. Like, they're coming out of the walls. I got movement behind us, man. I'm telling you, there's something in here and it ain't us.
Right. And even Ripley's like, give me that thing. What?
This is why I wish we had like a sound machine so we could just insert a lot of like Hudson's lines.
Yes.
Game over, man. Game over.
I'm not going out there.
Why don't you put her in charge, man?
Yeah, bro. That was a pretty good line. Great film. Very razzle-dazzle. Very action-packed, for a James Cameron film. But he still found a way to make it humanized.
Yeah.
That's why he's a damn good director.
Well, this is why I think this is something that he's kind of lost a bit in a lot of his more recent films, at least the ones within recent memory. Like, Ripley feels very much relatable on so many levels. Even the Marines that get killed, like, we identify so hard with them. And then even looking back at Terminator, like, there's qualities in Kyle Reese that we identify with, and there's qualities in Sarah Connor that we identify with. And then Terminator 2 Sarah Connor is just like full on robot murdering badass.
Right? Murder machine.
Yeah, we can get behind Terminator 2 Sarah Connor. We love Terminator 2 Sarah Connor. We love Aliens Ripley.
But somewhere between there and Titanic, he kind of just fell away.
I think all the divorces started getting to him.
He got really sour.
He got divorced a lot.
Yeah.
And I think he took it out on the women who divorced him.
The characters.
He stopped writing good female characters after getting divorced 4 times.
I've written enough.
We're sorry, Linda Hamilton. It's not your fault. It's that James Cameron's a jerk.
Oh, God. Did you have any lens flares?
You know, for the most part, I didn't have a problem with this movie, except for the fact when Ripley is about to go off with the Marine Stealthy 426. And you just see her look at Jonesy and go, and you little stinker, you're going to stay here. Like, stay here doing what? Is there some sort of like cat kennel you can stick him in for a week? Is there like a hotel for pets on this space station? You're just going to leave this tabby cat behind and not make arrangements for him to continue living? That's my one lens flare, though. And it happens early on enough in the movie where it's like, I don't care. Because by the end of the movie, we forget, oh, wait, there's a cat at the space station waiting for her.
Right. Well, because that cat led to how many people's deaths? Almost hers. Yeah, so I get that. Yeah, lens flare, I didn't really have any either. Yeah, nothing really outside of my little gripe with the blood and feeling some characters were a little annoying. But no, nothing really threw me.
No.
Yeah, which is good. And we discussed our red shirt, toxic fandom.
Oh. Okay. Courtesy of IMDb. In the dropship, Corporal Farrow is wearing mirrored sunglasses, but the planet's atmosphere is completely overcast rainstorm. Sunglasses would not only be of no use, they would seriously impair her vision through the cockpit windows and the murk outside. We have a sunglasses pedant. Watch every single movie about that contains any pilots. They're wearing sunglasses. Who cares? Any Vietnam movie that's made, there is a pilot wearing some sort of cool aviator sunglasses. I'm pretty sure Top Gun, every single pilot in Top Gun's wearing sunglasses. Pilots wear sunglasses. It looks cool. It does not matter. James Cameron doesn't care about what's outside the cockpit. He cares about how people look on screen and how awesome it is.
That bothered you, huh?
That bothered me. It's just like, you clearly don't know pilot movie tropes.
They just want a trope-free movie.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
There's tropes in every movie. Just deal with it. No one cares what you have to put on the internet about it.
And the pilot got hers anyways, right?
Right, she died.
Yeah.
And she's not wearing sunglasses when she dies, so...
So there you go.
Right.
Oh, my God. Well, legacy. There's more. They didn't stop after this one.
They certainly didn't, but this is a similar situation that we found with the original film, that this film is able, like, it has a legacy of its own, certainly within the context of the overall Alien franchise, but this film individually, like, its legacy and its influence is far-reaching. And let's start with the year it came out, 1986. As we mentioned, Platoon came out this year. Also, we had films like Top Gun, Karate Kid Part 2, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home,
Wow.
Back to School, The Golden Child, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off all came out in this year and were among the highest grossing films.
That's incredible.
That's a great year. And that's only like 8 movies that were fantastic that came out this year. So there isn't like a final box office total, but there is an estimate that came out in 1992 from Fox that said the movie made $157 million worldwide, which is pretty good, which is great. This Aliens was one of the highest grossing films of that year, so it was a massive success. And dissimilar to what we saw with Alien, this movie was well received in its time. Mm-hmm. Critics loved it. Everybody loved it. Even contemporary reviews are still positive. It has a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, 84 on Metacritic, has an A on Cinema Score, and nominated for 7 Academy Awards.
Yeah, they made up for missing out on the first one. I think.
It actually won for Best Sound Editing and Best Visual Effects. 2 awards, rightly deserved so. The visual effects are incredible even to this day. Also nominated for Best Production Design, Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, Best Sound Mixing, and in a rarity for the genre, and I think the first film where we've seen this in our catalog that's come up, Sigourney Weaver was nominated for Best Actress.
Mm.
Rightfully so.
Oh, yeah. She acted the hell out of this one. Because the first one, it felt more subtle. This one, that PTSD, she was just great. But I think she lost to someone.
She lost to Marlee Matlin
Oh.
in a movie called Children of a Lesser God, which I have not seen. I don't know.
No.
I don't know how good of a job Marlee Matlin did, apparently enough to win an Academy Award.
I don't even know who that is.
She's the most prominent deaf actress.
Okay.
She's been in a lot of things. Won a bevy of Saturn Awards, way, way too many.
Just take them all.
Take them all, basically. When you have a movie like this that comes out, just take all the Saturn Awards.
It was the return of the king.
Basically.
Of the Saturn that year.
And we're going to kind of get into the fun bits of the legacy. So when it was released on VHS in 1987, this retailed for $90 freaking dollars on VHS.
God. Wow.
That is a crap load of money.
I bet
Like, you basically had to work for 2 weeks and just eat ramen noodles just so you could afford to buy this movie.
And they could only watch it like 20 times because of the rewinding.
Right.
The tape was
Eventually,
getting-
that tape's going to wear out and you're going to break it. And then you get to spend $90 again.
I bet they're pissed off about Blu-ray nowadays.
Blu-ray certainly made everything easier.
I spent $90 on that VHS. We're watching it.
And now I only spend $10.
Oh, the passage of time.
As we mentioned, Carrie Hennand played Newt. She did not pursue an acting career. She eventually became a teacher. So,
Oh, wow.
noble profession. Way to go, Carrie Hennand.
That is cool. Wow.
And more sequels obviously released. We had Alien 3, Alien Resurrection. We've got prequel movies coming out now, courtesy of
yeah.
Ridley Scott. There's now a television series that's in development for release in a couple of years. But as we mentioned, I think this movie, more so than Alien, is more influential in the pop culture. And I think the addition of the Colonial Marines really kind of amped that up. And for me, especially being the pop culture nerd I am, like, you watch Aliens and then you go play a video game like Halo or Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and the influences are hard entrenched in those video games. Like, they even lift lines of dialogue from this movie into Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
I can see why. It feels like a game like that, you know?
Yeah, there's that line of Hicks pulling out that shotgun. I like to keep this handy for close encounters. That's in Modern Warfare. The affectation of "we are leaving" is in Modern Warfare. It's great. And then you get the character of Sergeant Apone basically recreated in Halo in the form of Sergeant Johnson.
Game over, man.
Game over.
Oh, man. Yeah, this film totally impacted. I think it changed the genre in a way because it made horror action.
Yeah.
You know, it made it cool because the first one, it just felt like a bunch of random science people like trying to figure out how to beat this, you know, whereas with this, it's like, oh, these guys are trained to kill.
Yeah. This movie's routinely listed on the list of best films of all time. They're too numerous to list here. And I think, like, this is a movie that, like, my buddies and I, we sit around and watch and just, like, we talk the entire time, but we watch it. It's a great movie. And I think this is a good time to kind of get into our rating and where we fall on Aliens. So on our unique scale for the podcast of would watch, would own, and would host a viewing party, I'll lead off this time. And I think I love that this film checks so many boxes. It's a horror film. It's a war film. And most importantly, for our purposes, it's a sci-fi film. And Ellen Ripley is one of the most incredible protagonists that's ever graced the screen, especially this portrayal in this film. And Sigourney Weaver is great. It's impossible to fathom or to contemplate anybody else portraying Ellen Ripley in this way. She understands the character backwards and forwards. She is Ellen Ripley. The visual effects are impressive, even to this day. This does not feel like a film that was made in 1986. Excuse me. This has to go down as one of top 5 films with the best visual effects ever. It has to. And every aspect of this movie is well thought out, and it's executed even better. And this is the unicorn of sequels. It's a film that in many ways surpasses its predecessor, and yet it's able to stand on its own. And you don't see that in sequels ever. And for those reasons, I'm calling this a would host a viewing party.
Rock on.
What about you, Sean?
I'm gonna echo you. Definitely, this is a would host a viewing party. I do think, for me, I liked Alien a little bit more just because it's more stripped back. But I love this, the quotable lines, the action, very relatable, as you said, with the military. And James Cameron, he's just such a action guru. He's what Michael Bay aspires to be, but will never be. So, I definitely loved it. I mean, one of my favorite scenes in this was when Ridley's backing away from Mother, and then she sees the egg hatch, and then just looks at her like,
"Are you freaking kidding me?" Yeah. That look, that's one of the most brilliant looks I've ever seen. Of like, we had an agreement.
Yes, I love that.
We had an accord, and you walked back on that accord. Now I get to kill all of you. I love that look.
Yes, I'm gonna fry everyone.
That's that look your mom would give you, like after she told you you can't have cookies before dinner. She just looks at you like, "I told you."
Even all the aliens backed away. They're like, all right, we swear.
We had an agreement.
Yes.
Look what you did, you little jerk.
And because of that, absolutely. This is a egg hatching, face hugger blasting would host a viewing party. I am down, brother.
All right.
All right. Hey, it's Sean from Force Fed Sci-Fi. You can probably tell by the audio change this is a different one. Yes, this was not recorded the same day. I ended up... we have to change the ending of this episode to tell you that we're going to continue on with Alien 3, as opposed to consulting with Major Samantha, which was the initial intended ending. So next week we shall be back, and we're going to be talking about David Fincher's version of Alien with Alien 3. So... if you enjoyed this episode, please check us out on our social media platforms. We are all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can check us out on Patreon. And if you enjoy our content, come to our website, www.forcefedsci-fi.com, for show notes and more information, just like our side projects that I'm plugging with my brother. And then also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts and streaming services. Shout out to all of our international listeners. I've recently seen that we've had a uptick in Australia, Norway, UK, some countries, South America like Brazil. And that's pretty rad. So I appreciate you all for checking us out, giving us a listen. And we shall be back next week. So have a happy holidays to y'all if you celebrate them. Do something good for yourself. Take care of yourself. This is Sean from Force Fed Sci-Fi. We'll see you next time. Thanks.